before Rome ever marched across Europe, before Celtic tribes carved their symbols into stone, before Greek explorers even mapped the Mediterranean, there existed a kingdom so old, so mysterious, and so powerful, that modern historians still argue whether it was Celtic, pre-Celtic, or something far more ancient. A civilization erased not by war, not by disease, but by time itself, and by the silence of those who eclipsed it. Today, on Dude Historian, we are diving into the forgotten world of the Ligurians, the vanished kingdom of the Western Mediterranean, hidden between the Alps and the sea. But before we begin, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and of course, subscribe so you never miss another Lost History deep dive. Now, let's step into a world older than Rome, older than the Celts, older than nearly everything you learned in school. Imagine a kingdom without borders. A people defined not by walls or fortresses, but by the fierce mountains that protected them, the violent Mediterranean storms that shaped them, and the ancient trade routes that enriched them. This was Liguria, stretching across what is now northwestern Italy, southeastern France, parts of Switzerland, and islands in the ancient Tyrrhenian Sea. But back then, this wasn't Italy. This wasn't France. This wasn't even Europe the way we imagine it today. This was a crossroads. A place where early Celtic groups, pre-Celtic tribes, Iberian wanderers, and mysterious sea peoples collided. And at the heart of it all stood the Ligurians, a civilization so old that even the Romans called them antiqui homines. The ancient people. Think about that. The Romans, who thought everything was old, looked at the Ligurians and said, "These guys were here long before us." Now, here's where things get interesting. Ask 10 historians who the Ligurians were, and you'll get 10 different answers. Some say they were Proto-Celts, the ancestors of the Celtic world. Others say they came from the Iberian Peninsula, making them cousins of ancient Spanish tribes. Some propose they were Neolithic survivors, older than Indo-Europeans. And a few argue they were connected to the mysterious sea peoples who almost destroyed Egypt. But whatever their origin, they built something remarkable. Their language, almost completely lost. Only fragments remain: river names, mountain names, tribal names, whispers of a tongue Europe forgot. Their culture, a mix of Celtic spirals, Iberian symbols, Alpine rock carvings, maritime mythologies, warrior traditions older than Italy itself. Think of them as the bridge civilization. Not fully Celtic, not fully Mediterranean, not fully Alpine. They were something older, something unique. Their land, almost impossible to conquer. Steep cliffs, jagged mountains, dense forests, and a coastline that produced some of the toughest sailors in the ancient world. And the people themselves? Roman writers describe them as extremely strong, fiercely independent, born on the rocks, lightly armed but deadly, resistant to slavery, masters of ambush and guerrilla warfare. Basically, the kind of people Rome hated fighting. And this tells us something crucial. The Ligurians survived because their world forced them to be hard. Their kingdom rose because no one else could survive where they thrived. The rise of the Ligurian kingdom. If you look at Western Europe around 2000 to 1000 BCE, you'll notice something odd. While most regions were fragmented into tiny tribes, Liguria became a network, a cultural kingdom. Not an empire, not a monarchy, but a loose, powerful federation connected by trade, shared rituals, maritime routes, sacred mountain sites, alliances between warrior tribes. This is why the Greeks, long before Rome, referred to them as a single people, a Ligurian world. Their power came from 4 things. 1. Geography, their natural fortress. No invading force could enter easily. Every valley was a maze. Every coastline hid safe harbors. 2. Trade mastery. They controlled amber routes from the north, salt routes from Iberia, maritime connections to Sardinia and beyond, mountain passes into what later became Gaul and the Alps. 3. Early metallurgy. The Ligurians were among the earliest metalworkers in Western Europe, especially bronze. 4. A warrior tradition older than the Celts. Not huge armies, not big fortresses, but small, deadly, mobile bands who knew every cliff and ravine. This allowed them to flourish even as larger powers rose around them. To understand the golden age of the Ligurians, you must picture a world before Rome's roads, before Gaul's tribes unified, and before Greek colonies dotted the coastline. Yet along the rugged arc from the French Riviera to northern Italy, something extraordinary was happening. Small communities high in the mountains, bustling ports hidden in narrow coves, trading stations carved into the cliffs, and a cultural network stretching farther than any kingdom of its era. This was not a golden age built on vast cities. It was built on connection. A web of tribes, each with its own leaders, its sacred stones, its custom warriors, yet all calling themselves Ligures. And to ancient visitors, this unity made them feel like one kingdom. Before Marseille, before Nice, before Genoa was even a dream, the Ligurians controlled the western Mediterranean's earliest sea highways. Ancient ships from Iberia, Sardinia, Etruria, Greece, all stopped at Ligurian ports to trade for amber, salt, copper and tin, fine wool, rare mountain herbs, bronze tools and weapons. To the Greeks, Liguria wasn't some backwater. It was the gateway to the north. And where there is trade, there is influence, there is wealth, there is culture. You won't find Ligurian megacities. No huge palaces, no sprawling capitals. Instead, their cities were fortified hilltop communities, perched so high that invaders grew exhausted just trying to reach them. Stone walls, bronze workshops, granaries, shrines where rituals were performed beneath the open sky. These mountain settlements served as defense posts, trade guardians, cultural hubs, tribal council points. Imagine a network of eagles' nests, each one watching over valleys filled with forests, deer, rivers, and ancient trails. This is why the Romans feared them. To fight a Ligurian is to fight the mountain itself. The Ligurians did not build temples. Nature was their temple. The mountain was a god. The river was a goddess. The oak, the guardian. The storm, the warrior spirit. Their rituals were performed at sacred springs, standing stones, caves, forest clearings, hilltop sanctuaries. Some archaeologists believe the earliest Celtic druidic practices were influenced by Ligurian beliefs. Rock carvings in the Alps, older than many Celtic sites, depict spirals, sun symbols, warrior lines, ritual dances, ancient boats, a society deeply connected to the earth, yet in constant conversation with the sky. The secrets and mysteries of the Ligurians. Now we enter the part that viewers love, the mysteries. Because the Ligurians left behind no written texts, no royal chronicles, no carved histories, no epic poems. So their story must be rebuilt from fragments. Mystery number 1, their language. We know it wasn't Latin. We know it wasn't Greek. We know it wasn't fully Celtic. But traces appear in many river names. Va, Dora, Taro, Orba, and tribal names like Torini, Ingorni, Apuani. These fragments act like fingerprints of a lost tongue. Some scholars believe it predates Indo-European languages. If true, the Ligurians might be among the last voices of prehistoric Europe. Mystery number 2, their origins. 3 competing theories dominate. A. Proto-Celtic origin. Genetic and cultural similarities link them to early Celtic tribes. B. Iberian origin. Bronze Age Iberian artifacts match Ligurian styles. C. Neolithic survivor origin. Rock art and settlements show continuity going back 6,000 to 8,000 years. The truth might be a combination. A melting pot forming one powerful identity. Mystery number 3. Why did the Greeks fear them? Greek texts describe Ligurians as rougher than the mountains they inhabit, born warriors, unconquered by spear or famine. But they also feared the Ligurian sea raiders. These weren't pirates. They were early naval warriors, controlling dangerous coastal routes. To the Greeks, the Ligurians were unpredictable. Sometimes trading partners, sometimes defenders of the western routes, sometimes rivals. And in a pre-Roman world, the Greeks had very few rivals. Mystery number 4. Why do they vanish from the records? This is the biggest mystery. One moment, they dominate the Western Mediterranean. The next, they almost disappear, mentioned only as tribes resisting Rome. But how does a kingdom powerful enough to influence trade routes simply vanish? That answer is coming later, and it's dramatic. Most people imagine that Rome was the first danger to the Ligurians. But the truth is, another rising power struck first: the Etruscans. Before Rome ruled Italy, the Etruscans did. A wealthy, mysterious, technologically advanced civilization. They wanted control over the metal trade, the coastal routes, the Alpine passages, and the Ligurians were in their way. This sparked the first major conflict of Ligurian history. Not a single war, but a centuries-long struggle. The Ligurians fought with ambush tactics, cliffside traps, mountain raids, fast-moving war bands, guerrilla strategies centuries ahead of their time. The Etruscans responded by building fortified cities, but they could never fully conquer Ligurian territory. Rome would learn this lesson the hard way. By the time Rome finally set its sights on northwestern Italy, the Ligurians had already survived centuries of conflict, with Greeks, with Phoenician traders, and most especially with the powerful Etruscans. But nothing, compared to the storm that was coming. Because Rome did not tolerate independent mountain tribes. Rome did not respect ancient claims. Rome wanted roads, access to the Alps, and control of the Western Mediterranean. And standing directly in their way, the Ligurian kingdom. To the Romans, Liguria wasn't just land. It was the final barrier blocking their expansion into Gaul and Iberia. This would spark one of the longest and most brutal mountain wars Rome ever fought. The Roman generals who marched north believed the Ligurians would fall quickly. They were wrong. The Ligurians fought like the mountains themselves. Lightning-fast raids, ambushes from above, rolling boulders onto marching legions, night attacks, valley traps, retreating into narrow passes then striking again. Roman records describe them as the most relentless of all Italy's foes. Even the Samnites, who defeated Rome multiple times, did not hold out this long. And what made the Ligurians especially dangerous? They didn't fight to expand. They fought to survive. This wasn't conquest. It was home defense. Every cliff, every forest, every trail was sacred. Their warriors fought barefoot on the rocks, moving faster than Roman heavy infantry could comprehend. It wasn't unusual for a 10,000-man Roman force to lose half its strength climbing a mountainside before the fighting even began. The Romans tried to negotiate. At one point, Roman diplomats tried to negotiate peace. The Ligurians listened, and then kidnapped the delegation. Rome was furious, but also terrified, because this showed that the Ligurians were not intimidated, not impressed, not desperate for peace. They were ready to fight to the very last tribe. The rise of the heroic tribes. As Rome escalated its campaign, certain Ligurian tribes rose to legendary status. 1. The Ingorni, masters of the coast. They built fast, agile boats capable of outrunning Roman ships. Rome accused them of piracy, but in reality, they were defending their waters. 2. The Apuani, the most feared mountain warriors. Roman legions repeatedly failed to defeat them, suffering humiliating losses in forest and highland battles. 3. The Taurini, a proud tribe living near the Po Valley. They were so strategically placed that Romans had to neutralize them before expanding north. 4. The Friniati and Stadielli, known for posing fierce resistance and for maintaining alliances with Celtic tribes further north. Each tribe had its own leaders, its own warriors, its own mountain fortresses. Yet when Rome attacked, many united under a single purpose. Liguria must remain free. This unity was rare in ancient tribal cultures, and it terrified Rome. The turning point: Rome becomes desperate. Rome was losing too many soldiers, too many resources, too much time. And then something happened that sealed Liguria's fate. Rome elected new consuls who were not interested in compromise. Men shaped by war. Men whose careers depended on victory. Men who were willing to break every rule of ancient warfare. And they issued a chilling strategy. We cannot defeat the Ligurians tribe by tribe. We must break them all at once. This led to massive deforestation. forced clearing of mountains, destroying farms, burning sacred sites, taking women and children hostage, building roads deep into Ligurian territory, establishing permanent military camps. Rome was turning Liguria from a natural fortress into exposed land. These weren't just battles anymore. This was erasure. The tragedy of the Apuani. The Apuani were the fiercest of all Ligurian tribes. Roman generals wrote that fighting them was like fighting ghosts. After decades of war, Rome had enough. So they executed one of the cruelest operations in ancient Italy. They deported the entire Apuani tribe, 40,000 people, and scattered them across southern Italy. Not just warriors. Entire families. Children. Old people. Priests. Craftsmen. The Apuani vanished from their homeland forever. This was Rome's strategy. If you can't defeat a people in battle, remove them from their mountains. This moment marks the beginning of the end of the Ligurian kingdom. Rome finally breaks through. With the Apuani removed, Rome gained access to crucial valleys. Roads were built. Forts established. Legions poured in from the south. The once impenetrable Ligurian world became filled with Roman outposts. The remaining tribes fought bravely, fiercely, desperately. But Rome was now more organized, more numerous, more technologically advanced, more ruthless, and absolutely determined. This wasn't conquest anymore. This was elimination. And slowly, one by one, tribes fell, not because they were weak, but because the pressure was relentless. Even then, Rome admitted, no people fought longer than the Ligurians. By the mid-2nd century BCE, the Ligurian world was scarred. Forests cut down, sacred sites destroyed, families displaced, valleys turned into Roman roads, ports converted into naval bases. But the Ligurians still had one advantage: the high mountains. There, in the fog-covered peaks, the last free tribes made their final stand. The Statielli, famous for refusing to kneel. Rome tried to negotiate. The Statielli refused. Rome offered land. The Statielli refused. Rome threatened them. The Statielli answered by burning bridges and blocking roads. Rome eventually broke through, but only after heavy losses. The Ingorni. Beside the sea, they resisted longer than anyone expected. Their ships harassed Roman supply lines, slowing the invasion. But after multiple campaigns, the Romans captured their main harbor. The final hill forts. One by one, the last mountain strongholds fell. Not because they were conquered, but because the Ligurians were starving. Rome had cut off food, water routes, and trade. The last warriors often fought until their weapons broke. And when their swords shattered, they fought with stones. And when the stones ran out, they fought with their bare hands. Rome recorded this with respect. They fought with the fury of those who know they will not live to see surrender. The fall of the Ligurian kingdom. There is no single date for the fall of the Ligurian kingdom. No one battle. No final king. Instead, it ended the way mountains erode, slowly, painfully, rock by rock. The true fall happened in 4 waves. 1. Forced deportations. Just like the Apuani, several tribes were relocated to southern Italy. Entire cultures removed. 2. Enslavement of survivors. Thousands were taken to Rome and sold into slavery, a tragic end for a fiercely independent people. 3. Roman urbanization. Rome built ports, roads, fortified colonies, military outposts. New towns replaced old ones. Latin slowly replaced the Ligurian tongue. 4. Loss of identity. Within a single century, the Ligurians no longer existed as a unified people. Not because they vanished, but because they were absorbed. A cultural disappearance. Not a biological one. But did they really disappear? Here's where the story gets fascinating. Most people believe the Ligurians were wiped out. But that's not true. Their bloodline survived. Their traditions survived. Their identity survived. Hidden, merged, transformed. The Romans conquered them, but never erased them. Let's break down how the Ligurians still live on. 1. DNA evidence. Modern genetic studies in Liguria, Italy, Piedmont, Provence, Maritime Alps, Corsica, all show traces of ancient pre-Celtic, pre-Latin populations. Scientists found patterns suggesting continuity. A population living there for thousands of years. Those are the Ligurians. 2. Place names that refuse to die. Many modern place names come from the Ligurian language. Genua, Genoa. Torini, Turin, Torino. Segusio, Susa. Varus, River, Var. Brigantium, Briancan. These names existed long before Rome. Rome copied them. They didn't invent them. 3. Cultural echoes. Even today, the region has traditions that hint at Ligurian origins. Mountain dances. Ritual fires. Wood carving symbols. Spiral motifs. Ancient festivals tied to seasons. Alpine shepherd rituals. Maritime celebrations. Some are nearly identical to pre-Celtic practices in Ireland and Iberia. 4. Linguistic fragments. A few archaic local words in northwestern Italy and southeastern France do not come from Latin. Linguists believe they may be remnants of the Ligurian tongue, a language that should have vanished 2,000 years ago. Yet traces remain. The Ligurian legacy in the modern world. Now we shift from tragedy to legacy, because your viewers will love this part. The Ligurians left behind something bigger than Rome expected. 1. The culture of hard work and independence. Modern Ligurian regions are known for fierce independence, mountain resilience, strong community loyalty, maritime skill, a reputation for toughness. These traits echo their ancient identity. 2. Genoa, the city of ancient roots. Genoa later became one of the most powerful maritime republics in history. But long before the Genos, there were the Ligurians. Their ports created the foundation for a future empire of trade, banking, and exploration. 3. The Alpine spirit. The survival skills of mountain people today. Shepherding, cliffside farming, highland trade. Mirror the ancient Ligurians almost exactly. Even the terraced slopes around the region seem like descendants of ancient techniques. 4. The European connection. Many Celtic tribes that migrated into Gaul and Iberia interacted with the Ligurians. That's why. Some Celtic symbols. Some Iberian designs. Some southern French traditions have surprising similarities to Ligurian origins. They were the root system connecting early Europe. When ancient civilizations disappear, their myths often disappear with them. But the Ligurians left behind echoes. Whispers carved into rock. Symbols embedded in Celtic traditions. Mythic characters mentioned by Greek travelers. And rituals that survived in rural communities long after Rome fell. Today, we try to reconstruct what they believed. Their gods, their spirits, their worldview. Their pantheon wasn't like Greece or Rome. There were no marble temples, no huge statues, no grand priestly class. Instead, their religion was animistic, ancient, elemental. 1. The mountain spirits, the Briga. The word Briga appears in dozens of Ligurian and Celtic place names. Brigantium, Briancan, Briga Marittima. It means high place, but also sacred high guardian. Many scholars believe the Ligurians worshipped mountain spirits, protectors who watched over valleys and tribes. This belief later influenced Celtic deities associated with peaks and heights. 2. The river goddess, Deva. Many Ligurian river names include roots like Dev, Deva. These are linked to ancient European words for goddess, divine water, or sacred flow. The Ligurians believed rivers were living beings, givers of life, destroyers of land, carriers of messages. Offerings were thrown into rivers. Small bronze objects, animal bones, woven garlands, stone figurines. This river worship tradition survived into medieval festivals. 3. The storm god, Tyrannos. This is where the Celtic connection becomes unmistakable. The Ligurian storm god appears to be an early form of Tyrannes, the Celtic thunder god. He was associated with lightning, oak trees, hilltop fires, the protection of warriors. Ligurians lit great fires on ridges during storms, a practice recorded by early Greek sailors who called the sight terrifying and beautiful. 4. The forest mother, Matrona. Ancient inscriptions found in southeastern France mention a mother goddess, linked to forests, fertility, and harvest. In Celtic regions centuries later, we find the matres, mother goddesses depicted in triplets. This suggests the Ligurians may have inspired early Celtic matron cults. 5. The sea guardians. Ligurian sailors offered sacrifices before voyages. Not to Poseidon, but to ancient marine spirits believed to live in underwater caverns. Fishermen in Provence and Liguria still perform symbolic rituals today, echoing these forgotten traditions. Ligurian heroes and legends. Though we lack their written epics, fragments of Ligurian hero tales survive indirectly, through Greek reports, Roman historians, and local folklore. Here are the 3 legendary figures your viewers will love. 1. The old warrior of the Apuani. A nameless elder who led the Apuani in their final battle. Roman writers describe him as a man older than the city of Rome itself. He fought even when wounded, even when surrounded, until his last breath. To the Ligurians, he symbolized resistance, loyalty, the spirit of the mountains. His story was repeated for centuries in Alpine villages. 2. Crixus the Wanderer. Some believe he was of mixed Ligurian Celtic origin, a warrior who fought from the Alps to the Pyrenees. A man whose name means the one with crossed fate. Later Celtic tales speak of a traveler who taught mountain tribe strategies of ambush, clearly echoing Ligurian war tactics. 3. The Sea Twins. A Ligurian myth tells of twin brothers, one born of the mountain wind, one born of the sea tide. Together they guided sailors, protected fishermen, and defended their people from foreign ships. Some modern Ligurian family crests still depict twin symbols, a faint memory of the myth. The slow merging with Rome. The fall of a kingdom doesn't always mean the end of a people. After Rome conquered Liguria, the next phase began. Integration. Not willingly, not peacefully, but gradually. 1. Roman colonies replaced tribal centers. Rome built Luna, Genua, Albingornum, Dertona, Augusta Taurinorum, Turin. These cities became administrative hubs, but beneath each Roman layer lay a Ligurian foundation. 2. Soldiers become Roman auxiliaries. Ligurian warriors were so skilled that Rome eventually recruited them into its armies. They served as elite mountain scouts, light infantry, coastal raiders, alpine defenders. In a twist of fate, the same people Rome almost destroyed became protectors of the Roman Empire. 3. Intermarriage and cultural blending. As decades passed, the boundary blurred. Ligurian families married into Roman families. Roman merchants married Ligurian women. Languages mixed. Traditions fused. Within 150 years, a new Romano-Ligurian identity emerged, one that shaped the northwestern Mediterranean for centuries. 4. The hidden survival. Though their name disappeared from maps, the Ligurian spirit lived on. In alpine toughness, maritime expertise, rural traditions, local dialects, place names, genetic traces, seasonal festivals. To this day, you can still feel it if you walk the high trails of the Alps or follow the old coastal paths. By the 1st century BCE, the Ligurian world had transformed. Not disappeared, not erased, but absorbed, laid beneath Roman expansion like ancient bedrock supporting new foundations. Rome brought Latin language, stone architecture, laws, coinage, organized trade, urban planning. But none of this erased the older identity. It simply merged with it. Romanization in Liguria wasn't a clean replacement. It was a slow fusion. 1. The road that changed everything, Via Postumia. The Romans built a major road from Genoa to the Po Valley, Via Postumia. This road connected Ligurian coast to inland trade, allowed rapid military movement, boosted markets, spread Roman culture, but it also carried Ligurian goods out into the empire. Olive oil, wool, metals, and mountain herbs. Instead of crushing Ligurian economy, Rome unintentionally helped it expand. 2. The coastal transformation. Ligurian ports once filled with Bronze Age ships, now hosted Roman galleys and merchant vessels. Genoa became a thriving Roman naval site. Albenga became a Roman agricultural hub. La Spezia's bays began to hold Roman fleets. Yet fishermen still used ancient Ligurian techniques: nets, hooks, and chants inherited from ancestors long forgotten. 3. Roman citizenship arrives. As decades turned into centuries, more Ligurians gained Roman citizenship, military rank, property rights, political status. Some even rose to become centurions, merchants, minor officials, wealthy landowners. Rome didn't expect this. But the Ligurians adapted quickly. Their stubbornness became ambition. 4. Rural villages keep ancient traditions. While cities Romanized, the mountains remained Ligurian. In rural areas, ancient festivals survived. Old dialects persisted. Traditional dances continued. Animistic beliefs hid beneath Christian symbols. Oral legends passed through generations. And in many of those villages, you can still sense an identity older than Rome itself. Liguria after Rome falls. When the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century CE, most regions of Italy plunged into chaos. But Liguria, something unusual happened. Instead of collapsing, it reverted back toward its ancient roots. Mountain villages became independent again. Coastal towns formed their own councils. Trade routes continued. Family alliances strengthened. And even though these people now spoke early Romance languages, their social structure resembled their Ligurian ancestors. Small communities, local leaders, strong mountain identities, resistance to outsiders. It was as if history turned full circle. The Lombards arrive, but cannot fully control Liguria. When the Germanic Lombards invaded Italy, they found it easy to conquer the plains, but nearly impossible to dominate the Ligurian mountains. Sound familiar? Even 700 years after Rome's conquest, Ligurian resistance patterns repeated. Ambushes, hidden passes, fortified hill towns, refusal to submit, just like their ancestors. The Byzantine foothold. The Eastern Roman Empire tried to hold coastal Liguria, using Genoa and nearby towns as strongholds. But mountain tribes resisted both Byzantine taxes and Lombard rule. Once again, history repeated. The medieval Ligurians re-emerge. By the 10th to 11th centuries, a clearly distinct cultural identity formed again. Not Roman, not Lombard, not purely Italian. Something in between. Something old. Something Ligurian. The birth of medieval Genoa. Out of these ancient roots came one of the greatest maritime republics in history, Genoa. Most people believe its rise began in the Middle Ages. But the truth? Its foundation was laid thousands of years earlier by the Ligurians. Ports, trade networks, mountain routes, craftsmanship, navigation skills, coastal resilience. The Genos simply built upon it. 1. Genoa's rise was a return to Ligurian strengths. The ancient Ligurians were sailors, traders, warriors, negotiators, mountain people. And medieval Genoa became a naval powerhouse, a commercial hub, a fortress city, a republic of fiercely independent citizens. This wasn't coincidence, it was legacy. 2. The spirit of independence lives on. When Genoa declared itself a republic, the motto became, "Better to be free among mountains than servants on the plains." A saying rooted in ancient Ligurian philosophy. 3. The Genos Navy, inheritors of ancient sea warriors. Genos sailors dominated the Mediterranean for centuries, defeating rivals from Spain, North Africa, and even Venice. They became explorers, bankers, admirals, cartographers. But their maritime courage traces back to the old Ligurian sea tribes. The Ingorni, the Sordones, the coastal fishermen who braved the ancient waters. The Ligurians rediscovered. For most of history, the Ligurians remained a faint memory, a footnote in Roman texts, a whisper in French and Italian folklore. But in the 18th to 19th centuries, historians rediscovered them. Why? Because scholars noticed something shocking. Too many place names weren't Latin. Too many stones had pre-Celtic carvings. Too many myths had non-Roman patterns. Too many traditions resembled Iberian and Celtic customs. Too much genetic continuity existed. So researchers asked, who were the people before the Romans? And the answer led them to the Ligurians. For all we've uncovered about the Ligurians, their greatest secrets remain hidden. The frustrating beauty of ancient history is this: the deeper you dig, the more questions you find buried beneath the answers. Here are the mysteries that still keep historians awake at night. 1. The lost Ligurian language. We have place names, rivers, tribal titles, a few inscriptions, but not a single complete sentence. No grammar, no alphabet, no epic, no poem. It's possible the Ligurians used oral tradition only, like many pre-Roman cultures. Imagine thousands of years of stories, myths, laws, and songs, carried by voice alone, and lost with the final generations. Could their language be reconstructed one day? Some linguists believe yes, through comparisons to Iberian, Celtic, and Alpine fragments. But for now, the voice of the Ligurians remains silent. 2. Their exact origin. Were they Proto-Celts, pre-Indo-Europeans, a blend of Iberian and Alpine tribes, descendants of Neolithic cave painters, survivors of the mysterious sea peoples? The evidence supports all of them, and none of them. Some scholars now argue that the Ligurians might have been one of Europe's last indigenous populations, predating Celtic migration entirely. If true, they were not Celtic-like. They were the blueprint. 3. Their kings, did they have any? Greek writers occasionally mentioned Ligurian leaders. Roman authors spoke of chieftains. But no royal tombs have ever been found. No crowns. No palaces. Which leads to several theories. They may have had councils instead of kings. Power might have been distributed among tribes. Leadership could have rotated by season or ritual. Or perhaps their hierarchy was so different that we simply don't recognize it. 4. Their mythology, more than nature worship? Some carved symbols suggest solar cults, ancestor worship, warrior blessings, fertility spirits, maritime gods. But without written records, we can only interpret echoes. The true Ligurian mythic world may have been as rich as Greek, Celtic, or Norse mythology, a universe lost to time. 5. Why Rome feared them so much. Roman generals wrote about Ligurians with an unusual tone. Not disdain, not arrogance, but respect mixed with fear. The question historians ask is, why were they considered so dangerous? Was it their guerrilla warfare, their geography, their alliances, their unpredictability, their extreme endurance, or something deeper? Something Rome never fully understood? That mystery remains unsolved. Modern Ligurian identity. Today, the Ligurians are not gone. Their descendants live in Liguria, Italy, Piemonte, Provence, Maritime Alps, northern Tuscany, parts of Corsica, western Switzerland. And while the ancient kingdom vanished, its spirit remains vividly alive. 1. The character of the people. Ask anyone familiar with the region and they'll describe Ligurians as reserved but passionate, hardworking, resilient, cautious with outsiders, fiercely protective of family, proud of their land, deeply connected to the sea and mountains. These traits mirror ancient Roman descriptions of the Ligurian tribes almost word for word. 2. Food that carries ancient memories. Ligurian cuisine is simple, mountain-born, resourceful, basil pesto, chestnut flour dishes, seafood stews, mountain herbs, focaccia, walnut sauces, all reflect a culture shaped by both scarcity and creativity. Traits of ancient highland communities. 3. Mountain festivals with pre-Roman roots. Even today, rural towns celebrate rituals that light bonfires on hilltops, honor the coming of spring, bless mountain passes, leave offerings at fountains, dance in circles on harvest nights. These match patterns found in ancient Alpine and pre-Celtic communities. The Ligurian fingerprints are unmistakable. 4. Genoa's proud independence. The Genos identity. Proud, stubborn, maritime, innovative. Reflects the old Ingorni and coastal Ligurians. To this day, Genoa's old districts trace the same routes Ligurians walked, over 2,500 years ago. The city is modern, but the bones are ancient. 5. The linguistic survivals. The Ligurian dialect, Ligur, still preserves ancient vocabulary, Iberian-type sounds, Alpine influences, Celtic parallels. Some linguists believe it carries faint echoes of the old Ligurian language underneath Latin, like a ghostly whisper beneath the living tongue. The unbroken thread. This is the part of the documentary where your viewers feel the weight of history. Because when you look at modern Liguria, you don't just see an Italian region. You see a living survivor, a culture that endured tribal warfare, Etruscan pressure, Greek encroachment, Roman conquest, Germanic invasions, medieval chaos, modern political borders. And yet, the people are still there. The land is still alive. The memory still breathes. Identity is not destroyed easily. Especially a mountain identity. Especially a sea identity. Especially one forged before written history itself. The Ligurians are proof that no culture truly disappears, as long as people continue to carry its spark, even unknowingly, even silently, even in fragments. The deeper historians dive into the world of the Ligurians, the more we realize something incredible. There are still pieces missing, pieces that could change European history. So let's walk through the lingering puzzles. The questions future archaeologists and curious viewers like yours might one day help solve. Riddle number 1. Were they older than the Celts? Most textbooks teach that Celtic culture spread across Europe first, but some evidence suggests Ligurian settlements predate Celtic ones. Ligurian symbols appear before Celtic spirals. Early Celtic tribes may have absorbed Ligurian traditions. If true, the Ligurians might not be Celtic at all. They might be the ancestors of the Celts. This debate is ongoing and heated. Riddle number 2. A hidden maritime network? Ancient anchors, pottery shards, and tools suggest the Ligurians had seen networks stretching to southern France, Catalonia, Sardinia, Corsica, the Balearic Islands, possibly even North Africa. But without written records, we don't know how far their influence reached. Some historians think the Ligurians played a major role in Bronze Age maritime trade, but were overshadowed by later Greek and Phoenician empires. Riddle number 3. Why did they resist so fiercely? Many tribes fought Rome, but few resisted for generations like the Ligurians did. Some theories suggest ancient prophecies, sacred inheritance tied to mountains, multi-tribal alliances, fear of cultural extinction, ancestral duty. Others believe their geography instilled a unique psychological toughness. Mountains shape people differently. The truth? We still don't fully know. Riddle number 4. The ghost tribe that vanished completely. The Apuani were deported en masse, yet records show thousands simply disappeared during the relocation. Were they killed along the way? Escaped into the mountains? Merged with other communities? Or secretly returned generations later? Their fate remains one of ancient Italy's greatest enigmas. Riddle number 5. What happened to their sacred sites? Many Ligurian sanctuaries were destroyed by Rome. Others were built over by Christian churches. Some are still lost in the mountains. Archaeologists believe entire temples may still lie hidden beneath forest soil, waiting for rediscovery. What the Ligurians can teach us today. At this point in your documentary, your viewers aren't just learning history, they're feeling it. And this is where you deliver the modern lesson. What this forgotten kingdom can teach us today. Lesson 1. You can survive anything. The Ligurians endured stronger neighbors, brutal invasions, cultural erasure, geographic isolation, deportations, forced assimilation. Yet their identity survived for thousands of years. Their story teaches resilience, the ability to stand strong, even when the world tries to erase you. Lesson 2. Small cultures still matter. Rome wrote the history books, but the Ligurians shaped trade routes, local dialects, regional architecture, cultural psychology, modern identity of whole regions. Small cultures don't need empires to leave a lasting footprint. Lesson 3. Geography shapes destiny. Mountains made the Ligurians tougher, more independent, more protective, less conquerable. The environment that challenges you is often what shapes your greater strengths. Lesson 4. Legacy doesn't require fame. The Ligurians were forgotten in textbooks, but never forgotten by time itself. Their imprint lives in place names, traditions, food, music, family lineages. Legacy doesn't always look like a statue or a monument. Sometimes it looks like resilience. Sometimes it looks like a community that refuses to fade. Lesson 5. History belongs to everyone. You don't have to be a historian to rediscover a lost civilization. Curiosity is enough. A question is enough. A documentary like yours is enough. The Ligurians remind us that history is not a closed book. It's a puzzle, and every generation helps uncover a new piece. Why the Ligurians were erased from history books. Now we address the dramatic truth behind your title. Why were the Ligurians erased from history books? This part should feel like the biggest reveal, the moment where your whole documentary comes together. Reason 1. Rome controlled the narrative. After conquest, Rome wrote the history, the laws, the maps, the cultural memory. Anything not Roman was reduced to footnotes. Rome didn't intentionally erase the Ligurians. They simply ignored them. Reason 2. No written records. Cultures without written texts are always at risk of being forgotten. Oral traditions vanish when the people are dispersed. The Ligurians left no scrolls, no carved chronicles. History filters out the silent. Reason 3. Assimilation was complete. Unlike the Celts or Etruscans, who left distinct markers, the Ligurians merged almost seamlessly into Roman society. Their very success at adapting made them invisible to later historians. Reason 4. Medieval scholars misidentified them. For centuries, people believed Ligurians were just early Italians, or minor Celtic tribes, or simply mountain rustics. Their true identity was lost under layers of misinterpretation. Reason 5. Modern national borders split their homeland. The Ligurian world once stretched across France, Italy, Switzerland, coastal Mediterranean regions. Modern borders fragmented their story, making their identity harder to trace. Reason 6. The victors overshadowed them. Just look at their neighbors: Etruscans, Greeks, Romans, Celts, Carthaginians. These cultures dominated literature, archaeology, and politics. The Ligurians simply got overshadowed. But forgotten? Never. They lived through the land, the people, and the evidence, just waiting to be rediscovered. At this moment in your documentary, slow the pace. Let the visuals breathe. Give the viewer space to feel the weight of 4,000 years. This section is less about facts and more about emotion. Imagine walking through Liguria today. You stand at the edge of a cliff, waves pounding the rocks below. The sun is setting behind the Alps. The wind carries the faint scent of pine and salt, and without realizing it, you are walking in the footsteps of people whose names were never written down, whose stories were never recorded, whose world existed before Rome, before Greece, before history even had a name. Their roads are now hiking trails. Their villages are ruins beneath olive groves. Their harbors are modern ports. Their sacred stones lie beneath moss and soil. ***. But their presence? Still there. It lingers like an echo, not loud enough to hear, but strong enough to feel. This is where you tell your audience, look closely at the land, and the Ligurians return. Because they are not gone. They are the cliffs. They are the forests. They are the sea routes. They are the old town walls. They are the stubborn, proud spirit of modern Ligurians. History fades. People fade. But landscapes remember. The Ligurian spirit. Now bring the story into the human present. Tell your viewers. Every culture leaves something behind. For the Ligurians, it wasn't pyramids. It wasn't marble temples. It wasn't golden statues. No, their legacy is spirit. A spirit that survived the Romans. Survived the Middle Ages. Survived the rewriting of history. What does that spirit look like today? 1. In the fisherman, who sails before dawn. Calm, quiet, stubborn, just like the ancient coastal tribes. 2. In the farmer, carving terraces into mountainsides, just as the Ligurians did 3,000 years ago. 3. In the merchant, trading across the Mediterranean, echoing ancient sea routes. 4. In the villager, protective of traditions, wary of outsiders, rooted deeply in place. 5. In the youth, who may not know the name Ligurians, but who carries their DNA, their temperament, their ancestral landscapes. This is where you make it personal for the viewer. Some of the most powerful civilizations in history were never empires. Some never had kings. Some never wrote books. Some lived quietly and simply endured. And the Ligurians? They endured in a way empires never could. The return of a lost kingdom. Now we tie the entire documentary back to your title. The Celtic kingdom erased from history books. Explain to the viewers. The Ligurians were not erased by failure. They were erased by silence, by the absence of written history, by the overwhelming voice of Rome, by geography turning them into ghosts. But the truth? The Ligurians are returning. Not physically, not politically, but in scholarship, archaeology, and cultural identity. Over the last 30 years, excavations in the maritime Alps and Italian Riviera have revealed ancient Ligurian shrines, pre-Celtic cave art, bronze tools older than Rome, settlements built on high ridges, burial grounds with unique rituals, maritime artifacts predating Greek influence. Each discovery brings their world back into the light. Piece by piece, the erased kingdom is being rewritten into history. Why does this matter? Because it proves a powerful lesson. No culture stays erased forever. Truth finds a way out of the soil. A message for the viewer. Now deliver the emotional punch. The part your viewers will remember. The part that makes them comment, like, and subscribe. Speak to them directly. If you're watching this right now, you are participating in a revival of a lost people. Asterisk asterisk. By learning about them, you're undoing 2,000 years of silence. By caring about their story, you're giving voice to those who never had the chance to write their history. Tell them, you are proving that history belongs not to the victors, but to those willing to search. You are proving that forgotten civilizations can rise again, through curiosity. You are proving that no culture truly dies, as long as someone remembers. This is where you make your engagement request feel meaningful. So before we head to the final chapter, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to Dude Historian. Because together, we are rebuilding lost worlds, one forgotten civilization at a time. At this point in your documentary, the viewer understands the Ligurians as warriors, traders, sailors, mountain survivors. But now it's time to reveal the deepest lesson of their story. The Ligurians remind us that history is not written only by those who conquer, but also by those who endure. Asterisk asterisk. They weren't an empire. They weren't a superpower. They never built monuments or left behind libraries of scrolls. Yet somehow, their presence survived thousands of years of invasion, assimilation, destruction, cultural overshadowing, political fragmentation, modernization. The lesson? Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes strength is silent. Asterisk asterisk. Sometimes strength is measured. Not by how far you expand, but by how long you endure. Not by what you write, but by how deeply you root yourself into the land you call home. The Ligurians didn't conquer history. They outlasted it. Imagine their final sunset. Now deliver the most emotional scene of the documentary. The cinematic sunset. Invite your viewers to imagine this moment. Picture the final night before the last Ligurian tribe fell to Rome. A cold wind blows across the cliffs. Children sleep beside dying fires. Old warriors sit in silence, sharpening worn blades. Priests whisper prayers to mountain spirits. Mothers wrap blankets around their families. Men stare into the darkness, knowing tomorrow will be their final stand. There are no speeches, no banners, no kings, just people, mountain people, holding onto their identity, for one more sunrise. And as the fire crackles, the oldest elder speaks quietly. If we fall tomorrow, the mountains will remember us. Asterisk asterisk. That line, that sentiment, defines the Ligurian soul. They didn't believe in immortality through monuments or books. They believed in immortality through land. And in a quiet, powerful way. They were right. Because here we are, thousands of years later, still uncovering their world, still walking their paths, still speaking their place names, still feeling their spirit in the mountains and sea. The Romans won the battles, but the Ligurians won time. The return of the ancient voice. Now shift from tragedy to hope. From loss to rediscovery. Because the Ligurians are no longer forgotten. Archaeologists are studying them. New digs in the maritime Alps are revealing ritual sites, metal workshops, early Celtic Ligurian fusion artifacts, ancient sea tools, burial grounds, inscriptions older than Latin. Geneticists are tracing them. Modern DNA across Liguria, Piedmont, Provence, Corsica, shows ancestral continuity with prehistoric inhabitants, likely the Ligurians. Linguists are reconstructing them. Comparisons with Iberian, Alpine, and Proto-Celtic languages suggest a broad linguistic family that was far more influential than previously believed. Local communities are honoring them. Festivals, museums, and educational programs are restoring pride in the region's ancient identity. The Ligurians are finally speaking again, not through their own words, but through the voices of those rediscovering them. What we owe the Ligurians. It's time to tell your audience why this forgotten culture matters, why their story, a story almost lost forever, deserves to be told. 1. We owe them truth. For centuries, they were dismissed as barbarians, rustic mountain people, obstacles to Roman progress. But the truth reveals skilled traders, adaptive warriors, master navigators, cultural bridges, resilient communities. Their legacy deserves honesty. 2. We owe them recognition. They help shape the early Mediterranean, pre-Roman trade, Celtic expansion, Alpine culture, maritime traditions, northern Italian identity. Yet their name was almost erased. Not anymore. 3. We owe them remembrance. Cultures die when we stop speaking their names. But today, with this documentary, thousands of people are learning about the Ligurians. For the very first time, your video itself becomes an act of historical recovery, a revival. 4. We owe them gratitude for the trails they carved, the ports they founded, the traditions they shaped, the DNA they carried into modern communities. They weren't a footnote. They were the foundation, the final revelation. This is the powerful moment where you give them the final wow. Tell your viewers, the greatest civilizations in history, and not always the ones that conquered the world, but sometimes the ones that survived its storms. Asterisk asterisk. The Ligurians taught us, you can lose your land and still keep your soul. You can be forgotten in books but remembered by time. You can leave no writings, yet leave a legacy. You can be conquered, yet never erased. You can vanish from maps but not from memory. Their story is not one of defeat. It is a story of survival. A story of endurance. A story of quiet strength. Asterisk asterisk. And that is why the Ligurians matter. Now more than ever. We have reached the final descent of our journey into a world older than Rome, older than Greece, older than nearly everything we call European history. The Ligurians lived in the spaces between empires, in the shadows of mountains, in the coves carved by storms, in the forests that still whisper their songs. They left no written records, no written laws, no grand monuments, and yet, their presence shaped Western Europe more than most people will ever know. As the stars begin to appear over the coastline, imagine this as the last memory of a people. A child standing at the edge of a mountain trail, watching the lights of Roman camps far below, knowing the world is changing, knowing their tribe may not survive the night, yet also knowing, somehow, that the land itself will carry their story forward. This is the legacy of the Ligurians, a people written into the earth itself, the Mountain Testament. In many ancient cultures, legacies were carved in stone, but the Ligurians carved theirs in something stronger: memory, tradition, land. Asterisk asterisk. Their testament wasn't written in ink. It was written in the names of rivers, the shape of coastlines, the contour of mountain paths, the stubborn character of the modern people, the DNA of families who still live in their ancestral valleys. When the Romans finished their conquest, they believed they had destroyed the Ligurian identity. But identity, real identity, cannot be destroyed. It can be buried. It can be hidden. It can be overshadowed. But like seeds beneath winter snow, identity blooms again when the season changes. Today, the Ligurians live on more strongly than at any time in the last 2,000 years. Not physically, but culturally, scientifically, and spiritually. Now talk to your viewers as if they are part of this story. You didn't just watch a documentary today. You helped revive a forgotten civilization. You helped bring voice to people who were erased, not because they failed, but because history chose louder storytellers. You helped the Ligurians rise again, across time, across continents, across thousands of years of silence. You don't need to be a scholar to rediscover the past. You just need curiosity, and the willingness to ask a question no one else thought to ask. And then gently tie all the previous themes together. The Ligurians teach us that your story matters, even if no one writes it down. Your resilience matters, even if no one celebrates it. Your identity matters, even if the world overlooks it. Now deliver the final cinematic monologue, the one that ends your documentary with goosebumps. Here is the full closing sequence. History remembers the conquerors, but time remembers the survivors. Asterisk asterisk. The Ligurians were survivors. They survived the mountains. They survived the storms. They survived empires. They survived erasure. They survived silence. And here we are, thousands of years later, still speaking their name. Ligurians. A name nearly lost. A world nearly forgotten. A kingdom erased. But not anymore. Because today, you remembered them. You walked their paths. You revived their world. You gave them a voice. And through you, their story will never be lost again. Before you go, hit that like button if you felt the spirit of this forgotten world. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing this community come together from every corner of the planet. And of course, subscribe to Dude Historian, so we can keep exploring lost empires, hidden kingdoms, and the secrets history tried to bury. Thank you for keeping history alive. See you in the next journey.